in 2010 new constitution that includes a section on Indigenous people's rights. She was one of the leaders that worked on the public referendum in that. So we just extend that invitation.
Yeah, that's very good. We certainly are very pleased that Kenya has adopted a new constitution. You know, the results of the flawed election where so many people were killed, and as a matter of fact, as you know, the International Criminal Courts indicted 5 of their leaders and have gone to The Hague for initial preliminary hearings, and so we're very concerned and pleased that the Constitution has been approved. But believe it or not, we had a very strong intervention, I think, in a negative sense, from some of the right-wing conservatives to try to derail the Constitution because they felt that the question of women's rights was not what they wanted it, or what they perceived it was. And of course, they were totally wrong, because the new Constitution did not change anything in that whole area, but they actually had a campaign to try to defeat the Constitution because of the so-called right to choose and right to life provisions. And it was a very strong effort. However, we were able to see that was overcome, and that the people of Kenya approved the Constitution in spite of this intervention to derail it on the part of some members, actually, of Congress and the evangelical groups. So we've watched the Constitution very carefully and noticed the changes in the Constitution, and we are looking forward to the 2012 elections to be fair and free and without the tremendous problems that we saw in the last elections.
Well, we know our American businesses applauded the Kenya Constitution and said that they felt that this was indication that Kenya was truly on the right track. General Motors, FedEx, GM, General Electric all came out in great praise of the Kenya Constitution.
Well, we had some member of Congress and others go there to try to derail it. So fortunately, they were unable to influence the, and as a matter of fact, did try to influence a number of the religious groups and the churches with misinformation. But once again, I think the fact that most of the leadership supported the new Constitution, knew that if they did not have something in place before the 2012 elections, that the same problems that occurred after the last election could occur following the upcoming elections, and that was something that we did everything we could to prevent from happening. So I think that we're on the right track in Kenya. They've changed substantially their form of government, sort of actually patterned after hours. Not so sure that's the best thing, but anyway. No, seriously, I think that they will really move forward and be able to really have the fair and free elections, and I think Kenya will really move forward. Of course, as you mentioned, there are problems that countries do have to contend with, like the Maasai who move throughout borders, and that tends to be a sort of issue of modernity, modern days, as opposed to traditional behavior. So that we tend to see in several places, in Sudan, where you have herders versus farmers same kind of problems that we had in the U.S. 100 years ago or 150 years ago. So hopefully they've been able to maintain a balance up to now, and we just hope that that the tradition can continue to survive, even though we're in a modern day era. Is there any parting comments that each of you would like to make in conclusion?
I just wanted to add, in the case of Central African Republic, what the U.S. Congress might do is to reach out and congratulate them on the ratification of the ILO 169, which is, as you know, a tall order for a country like Central Africa. And I think the gap between the ratification and the implementation is maybe larger than it is in other places. So I think some encouragement in terms of congratulations and funding would be great. And also something that wasn't mentioned is that USAID has funded some very good programs in Namibia where Indigenous people are in control of their resources, their game parks, their animals, and it's worked quite well. And I think these are models for places like Central Africa and probably other African countries as well. And I think these should be continued and expanded.
Sir, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make? You're fine, okay. And
just request that you maintain your leadership on this issue, and that the committee keep moving forward and keep raising our voice and visibility.
very good. Thank you. Well, let me certainly thank each of you, and I understand it was a previous panel, for your testimony. We are pleased that the CAR is finally coming to some semblance of governance, and a number of elections held this year so far, some even very recent, are moving in the right direction. There'll be a total of 16 elections in sub-Saharan African countries this year, and maybe another 10 or 12, 8 or 10 next year. Very important elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Senegal. You'll have elections in Liberia and Kenya, and we've had elections this year, as you know, in Cote d'Ivoire, where we felt that there had to be a lot of pressure put on the loser, Gbagbo, to step down, and Ouattara, who was deemed a winner, should assume the presidency. We felt that if that did not occur, it would send a bad omen for elections upcoming, for presidents who lose elections to determine that they can stay in office. You know, as a matter of fact, I have not seen a more unified effort on the part of world bodies as related to the elections in Cote d'Ivoire, where the African Union and ECOWAS and IGAD and SADC and the European Union and the U.S. and everyone were on the same page and said that NATO actually, that Gbagbo should step down. And finally, after 6 months of civil strife, he has finally not only stepped down, but has been put under arrest for his actions. So one of the notions that came up was that perhaps we could have a coalition government, which of course is sort of the new thing. If you lose the election, you just say, well, let's share, as we saw in Zimbabwe with President Mugabe and Morgan Tsvangirai, and we even saw in Kenya where they decided to have a shared government. But in those instances, the former leader tends to maintain control, and it makes a forest of the election. So we were very determined to ensure that President Gbagbo, former President Gbagbo in Cote d'Ivoire, was unable to remain in control, because, like I said, with all these other elections coming up, it would send a bad signal to the other countries that if you lose, just don't leave. That's not what elections are all about. So we're hoping to see fair and free elections for the remainder of 2011 and those coming up in 2012. And it looks like we're on the right trajectory right now, going in the right direction. One final thing, though, when you mentioned the Central African Republic, the Lord's Resistance Army and Coney, who has been in that area and throughout parts of Sudan and Chad, has to be stopped. There has to be some way to bring him to justice. And I made this statement just a week ago that for a person who has terrorized people for over 20 years, there needs to be an effort where we bring in the right kind of whatever it takes to bring him to justice. It's a disgrace that he still roams around the central part of Africa. Well, let me thank each of you again, and the meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you.